Our reading today is Matthew 14, verses 22 to 33. Jesus has been feeding the spirits and stomachs of large crowds. He now sends the disciples into a boat, traversing the Sea of Galilee. Jesus retires to a mountain to be with God. A storm arises and the disciples see Jesus on the water. Impulsive Peter seeks to walk on the turbulent water and is saved by Jesus. A reading from Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 through 33. Immediately, he made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead to the other side, while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone. But by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost!" And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened and, beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me!" Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." May God add a blessing to these words of life.
Will you pray with me? May the words of my mouth fertilize your planted seeds, O God. Amen. Some people love this story. Some people doubt this story. I both love it and doubt it. What about you? It's not the greatest of our family stories, but it's a pretty good story. It's pretty compelling. It opens up a lot. But for those of us who are scientific people, that would be all of us 21st century people, this directly contradicts science. Do you ever take a bath? Do you walk on the water? Do you ever go swimming? Do you walk on the water? I don't know about you, but I sink. I sink. You see, this story breaks our norms, busts our expectations, directly contradicts what we think is usually happening in our lives. It outshines, outmoves, outpaces our expected outcomes. Our data-driven reality says that this story can't happen. But you see, that's the weird thing about God. God breaks into history and changes everything. Now, I'm not saying that Jesus did or didn't walk on the water. I'm not saying that Peter did or didn't walk on the water. I'm saying that this is a story. So what are we to take from the story? Why is it here? What is it meant to do? The purpose of this story is to tell us who Jesus is. Who is Jesus is the question that is being answered here. He fed the crowds. Remember, 5,000 men plus women and children were fed with 5 loaves and 2 fish, and it came out pretty well. He heals people. That comes out pretty well. So he has fed the crowds, both body and soul, and then Jesus sends his disciples away. Even before he sends away the crowds, he sends his disciples away, puts them in a boat, and sends them out into the Sea of Galilee. And there is a sense in this story that Jesus needs rest. He's been very, very busy, putting out a lot of karma, good energy into the world, God energy into the world. And there's a sense that Jesus needs to refill his batteries, to center his life, to regain his sense of who he is, body and soul. And so Jesus is up in the mountains on the side of the Sea of Galilee, the deep hills that are there, to be with his God, to recharge, to recenter himself. And the disciples are out in the night in the Sea of Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee is a tempestuous beast. The Sea of Galilee is known sometimes to be very, very calm. When I was on it, it was as calm as could be. It actually looked like I could walk on it. I didn't test that theory. But it looked dead calm. But it's also known to blow up squalls, to come down into the valley, the great winds, and to wash the waters up higher than the boats, and to slosh the boats about, and to send them tipping. And for these people, for the people of Jesus' time, the water, the depths, were the abyss, the place of great terror, of great fear, of great death. And so there was great fear, great terror in the boat of a great death. The quick squall came up. The boat was wobbling and jarring about. And there it was. Now, in the Mark version, there are 3 versions of this story in our Bible, one in John, one in Matthew, and then there's the Markan version. In the Mark version, Jesus is in the boat. He's asleep in the back of the boat. The disciples wake him up and say, we're going to perish. And Jesus, there's this wonderful Titanic scene where Jesus walks to the front of the boat and raises up his arms, you remember in the Titanic, and says, "Peace, be still." And the water turns dead calm like glass. But this isn't Mark, this is Matthew. Matthew is different. Not here, this story has peace. Jesus enters the storm. The way Matthew tells it, Jesus is walking on the stormy waters, the gales blowing around him, the mists coming up around him. The disciples are struggling, they're doubting, they're fearful, and Jesus enters the storm where the disciples are. And there's the identity of Jesus. It isn't the one who calms the waters, who makes everything serene and peaceful like we want it always to be. Jesus enters the storm. His identity is as God, the one who enters the life's storms, your life's storms, giving you confidence amidst the struggle, for there will be struggle. Professor and president, the new president of Wesley Theological Seminary, Carla Works, says, "The revelation of Jesus as present is only possible in the midst of the chaos. Life is calm. Jesus is present, but he's not needed when life is calm as much. In the chaos, Jesus is mighty and deeply present. He is there in the midst of the chaos." Melissa is driving her core. She's at a stoplight. She went to the doctor earlier in the day, so she pops open my chart. Nobody ever does that, right? You never check your my chart in the car. Too many of us do. She's got a busy life. She has 3 children, already busy. She's got a crummy job, already busy. She's got a shaky marriage. She's got a wobbly life. And now in her my chart, she reads that she has a cancer scare. She yells out into her car, I don't have time for cancer. And indeed, we don't. You see, her life is wobbly. She is walking on the wobbly waters. Her life is a storm. And Jesus enters that storm and gives confidence and clarity and hope. And Melissa closes her eyes. She's still in her car. She closes her eyes. She closes her phone. And she invites Jesus into the storm of her life. A moment of prayer until the impatient person behind her honks and she moves ahead. You see, the disciples are afraid. They think they see a ghost. Wouldn't that be what you thought? You're out on the Sea of Galilee in a boat. The storms are all around, and out of the mists comes this apparition, this figure, this what? Walking on the water. So they think it's a ghost, and they cry out in fear. There is something coming at me. But no, it's Jesus. And he does something absolutely amazing. We're going to take a little side turn here for a brief Bible lesson. It'll be brief. There won't be a quiz. Well, life is a quiz, but ego eimi. Ego eimi. That's the translation of I am. In Exodus 3:14, Moses is talking with God. Already weird enough. And God says, you go to the people and you call them out of the storm of slavery in their life. Call them out of the penury that has occupied them. Out, out, out. They should come. And Moses says, they might not listen to me. And Moses reaches back to God and says, maybe they'll listen to me if I give them your name. Because gods have many, many names. Baal was one of the big ones then. We use success, we use money, we use fame, we use all of these other gods. Let's give God a name, Moses says, so that they will listen to me. And God says, ego eimi, I am. That's all you need to know. I am. And that brings comfort because God is presence. I am. That's what we can say to our children when they are struggling. I am your father. I am your mother. I am with you. We have relationship. We are in this together. I am the ground of being. I am the bread of life. I am the miracle worker. I am the healer. I am the one on the cross. I am the one resurrected. I am with you always, even in life's tempestuous sea. I am. In your fear, in your doubt, in your brokenness, in your loneliness, in your awkwardness, I am present. I am. 18th century mystic Paul of the Cross said, what person has to fear who lives in the arms and bosom of God? Jesus, being seen on the water, they say, whoa, who are you? And he says, he quotes God because he is part of God, I am. And they say, oh. And he says, fear not, you of little faith, I am. As the storm swirls around him, the storm does not stop. Life still rages on. We still have to step forward. There will be difficulties in life always, but the perspective changes. I am. You are not alone. We can do this. You can do hard things. You can face the storms of life. That's what Jesus is saying to the disciples. I am with you, therefore you can handle the hard things in life. You can handle the storms. Life is going to be wobbly, but we're going to walk with Jesus. Act 2 of the story begins. Peter says, now, we're supposed to relate to Peter here. Peter is us. right? Project yourself in the story. Don't project yourself as Jesus. You don't want that job. Picture yourself as Peter. Peter, this courageous, this impetuous, this kooky guy who always gets himself into a bit of trouble. Doesn't sound like us, does it? Sounds more like me than I care to admit sometimes. So Peter, seeing Jesus, impetuously says, Lord, if it is you, command that I get out of the boat. Oh, would you do that? In the midst of a storm, not glassy water, not an easy swim, the deep water in the midst of a storm. Command me to come to you on the water. If it is you, trusting that it is God, trusting that it is God, Peter says, I'll come to you, and Jesus says, all right, come on, give it a try. And here's the problem for us. When life is full of storms, when the waves are high, when the storm is going, when it's night and we're on the waters and the boat is rocking, we're never really sure if it's God who's reaching out to help us. Yes? We always have that moment of doubt. Is this the right doctor? Is this the right way? Is the GPS right? Is this the best job for me? Is this the new path that I need to take? Is this the person I'm supposed to love for the rest of my life? Will my new teacher in school be good? Will my child's new teacher in school be good? What if they're not good? Maybe we need to teach our children to weather the storms. My daughter's had a fourth grade teacher, the same one. She'd stopped teaching several years before my daughters had her. But we didn't complain because we knew she would have bad bosses, bad coworkers. My daughters needed to learn how to deal with teachers who were tough so they could deal with life when it got tough. We're never fully sure. We must walk the wobbly way, unsure, but confident that God is with us. So Peter steps out into the storm. He walks. I always picture Peter strutting, right? Look at me walking on the water. Because that's who Peter was. And then he loses his focus. He changes his wisdom, and he starts to sink. His toes get wet, his ankles get wet, his knees get wet, his thighs get wet. Oh, the water's cold. And so he starts to sink. And he reaches up and he says, Jesus, save me. And Jesus reaches in and pulls him out of the water. Jesus reaches into the chaos of our life and pulls us up to safety. I often read a blog by Janet Hunt. She's a pastor in DeKalb, Illinois. Someday I'm going to actually meet her. It'll be fascinating. But she's got such a different turn of life than I have and carries me to new places when I read her. And she was talking about this particular text, and she said that we want our life to be calm, right? We want our life to be calm, safe. This is why we work hard. This is why we live where we live. This is why we work how we work. This is how we marry. This is how we raise our children, to be calm, safe, to never get into the rocky waters. We want the reliable car all the time. We want our life to be centered and safe. But then Hunt says, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we who follow Jesus are meant to walk on water just as Jesus did. Or maybe, at least, it's not a bad thing to try. As long as we remember when we sink in to reach out in gratitude and joy to the one who with a hand can lift us up again. Perhaps attempting to walk on water isn't so bad, particularly if in doing so we take home the certainty that we in fact are not Jesus. If you ever walked on water, would you think, hey, I'm Jesus? Friends, we're called to get out of the boat and into the storm. Life is going to be wobbly. It's going to be wobbly, but we're going to walk with Jesus as long as we walk with Jesus. Peter was doing well on the water, and then he started to sink. And I think about this like a child learning to ride a bicycle. How many of you ever rode a bicycle? Anybody remember learning to ride a bicycle? Anybody ever crash learning to ride a bicycle? Yeah. Those of you who didn't raise your hand, I'm a little curious. Side note, there's a reason to have children at 18 rather than at 31 and 33 when I did. Teaching them to ride a bicycle when you're in your 30s, man, I didn't have the wind or the strength to run behind a bicycle for block after block. But you take a hold of that seat, no training wheels. You take a hold of that seat and you run beside them and you push them and you get them just so that they've got the balance just right, exactly right. And they can feel it and you can tell everything is working together. And so you let go of the seat and they ride on and they ride on and they ride on and you're quiet and then you can't help you. You can't help yourself. You say, "You're doing great." And they go, "Huh?" I distinctly remember my dad huffing and puffing behind me. "You're doing great." And I went, "Huh?" and went right up a tree and right on over. That's what it is like Peter. He lost the balance. He took his eyes, the story makes it very clear, he took his eyes off Jesus. And so he started to sink. As long as we stay centered on Jesus, we're going to do well. We're going to do well, even in the midst of the storm. We're going to walk the wobbly way, but we're going to walk with Jesus. Again, Janet Hunt, it's not as though those of us who follow Jesus aren't called and aren't able to do amazing things, only never for ourselves alone. In fact, I can't help but wonder, she says, if it wouldn't be a whole lot like walking on water if we simply acknowledged our fears and stepped into them anyway. Do the thing you're afraid to do and trust that God will be with you in the wobbly way. Peter sinks. He takes risks. He walks the wobbly way. Sarah Dillon Breyer says, and that's why I take hope, not in condemnation when I read the scriptures, the stories of Jonah and Peter and all the rest of God's reluctant prophets and wavering disciples, because they tried, they got in the water, they failed just like we. We can be like those saints and give it our best shot. Their clumsy, clueless steps made space for God and God's mercy and God's strength to work with them, and they could move mountains and change the world. Yes? So can we. We keep forgetting that. I don't know when we lost our courage. We are Christians. We should be courageous because we have the power of God with us. Our faith founded hospitals and human rights organizations. Our faith founded schools and brought new strength and new power. You ever been to Good Samaritan Hospital? Downers Grove, right over here. Did you know that that's a United Church of Christ hospital? That our faith, our denomination founded that hospital and built it up to a great ministry that it is. That our churches were essential in that process. And on that campus is a senior living facility. And our church founded, our denomination helped found that particular facility so that seniors can have a safe place to live even when they don't have money to do that. We can do hard things, and we have done it in the past. In St. Louis, Missouri, there's a place called Every Child's Hope, ECH. It was founded in the late 19th century after a cholera epidemic went through St. Louis, killed a whole load of parents, and there were children who needed someplace safe to live. Literally, the church went and got children off of the street and put them in what was called an orphanage, now we would call it a children's home, and started a school, started medical facilities, raised those children up with grace and competence and strength, and now they deal with the toughest of the toughest children with mental health capacities. We can do hard things. We can change the world. When did we become afraid of the wavy waters and we want our sedentary life and our safety? We must rise to meet the tide, for the tide is coming for us and with us. We must be like Peter and be willing to step out of the boat, be willing to even go under the water and say, Jesus, help me, and know that God will walk with us on the wobbly waters. We must rise to meet the tide. Life is going to be wobbly, but we're going to walk with Jesus.